This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the Starcom radio network. Worldwide toll-free 800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And, of course, you can listen to us 24/7, 365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. You can also listen to us on a landline or your cell phone or any other handheld device by calling 213-401-0080. My first guest tonight, X-Zone Nation, is George Green, and George majored in geophysics at Colorado School of Mines and Law and Business at the University of Illinois. He is an expert in UFO phenomena investigation and making contact. He had contact with ETs and shares their messages in a book they authored called The Handbook for the New Paradigm. George has information on how this planet began, how the so-called elite, and they have plans apparently for World War III, the reduction of population, and the Plan 2000, which is in motion as part of the political agenda today. His website is www.nohoax.com. That's nohoax.com. And George, welcome back to the X-Zone. It's been too long, my friend.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate you having.
Well, you know what, George, you've covered the entire spectrum of what we talk about here in the X-Zone. First of all, tell us how you became interested in the UFO phenomenon and the extraterrestrials.
Well, what it does, when I joined the Air Force, my first assignment after a year of electronics school was Edwards Air Force Base, which was, the Air Force Research and Development Center. And one morning I did the post-flight inspection on the X-15. My career was in airborne electronics. Anyway, I was supposed to do the post-flight inspection on the X-15, which I did. It lands out in the dry bed. It's nothing more than a rocket on skids, frankly.
Right.
Anyway, it lands about 5 miles north of the main base. Now, Edwards has the largest runway in the world. It's 22 miles long.
Wow.
So, as you know, some of the space shuttles come in there. Anyway, I finished doing the inspection, but it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was 100 degrees, and they don't want you to be working when it's over 100 degrees. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I finished inspection. I had my Jeep, and I had to put 25 miles a day on the doggone thing to keep it. Well, there was a couple of hangars I hadn't been into. Now, it was cleared for top secret, and I went into one of the hangars, and there I was, and 10 feet away from the disc. This craft was about 25, 30 feet across, round, and it was silver. It was unusual, but I've been working on a lot of unusual craft. Anyway, I didn't think anything more about it. I went back to my commander and asked him. I said, when can I work on a round craft? And he said, you saw it? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, that's an ion-powered craft. You have to understand, ion-powered craft designed by Sikorsky, the helicopter people, for use in outer space. Now, this was in 1958. Now, that's right at the transition of all this When I first went in the Air Force, everything we had in airplanes were the old tubes. Remember the old tube radios?
Yes, I do.
Well, as soon as I got to the Edwards, all of a sudden I'm working on transistorized, all the diodes, everything else that they had. So, I had a new change in my expressionist, so to speak. Anyway, I asked the CO. He gave me that story. It was an ion-powered craft, and I said, great, when can I work on it? And he says, you can't. It's still a civilian project. When I was Edwards, there was 25,000 people there, most of them civilians, and only 800 airmen, and I was one of them. And anyway, what happened is I went back to my room, and I happened to be running around with my buddy, was the base photographer, who was taking pictures of all this stuff. And I said, get me some pictures of the round craft. He said, what'd they tell you? And he says, come on with me. So I went over to the lab, and I'm looking at pictures of this craft. But what got my attention, he took pictures of the 2 dead aliens. Now, they were humanoid looking, similar to the ones you probably look at, the ones in New Mexico where they talk about the grays. That's what they were similar like. They didn't have the descended stomachs. If you remember the ones down there have big, like bulges, that's where the gas was building up. But these were all just level. Anyway, now I'm upset. Why did my commander lie to me? So I went back and confronted him. And he said, that's when he told me, he said, when the government's ready to tell the truth about UFOs and ETs, they will. Until then, you stick to your story. And, of course, he debriefed me on my top-secret clearance, and we joked about a little bit about that. But the part that bothered me was the jail time. So, anyway, it put me on duty. The following week was Armed Forces Day, and they opened up the base. Anybody can come in and look at all these, the new equipment, except for this particular craft, which is north of the main area. Anyway, I was transferred off the base in 30 days. Anyway, I decided at that point this thing is getting crazy because why would they do that? But they just wanted me away from it. And some of the other equipment I worked on at that time was the F-104, the Starfighter. So they said I was one of the few who was trained on it, so they sent me over to Japan. Anyway, I was there for 30 days, and that didn't work very well, so I ended up going to school over there for a while at Stochpash University. So then decided something else has to be on. I was admitted to Colorado School of Mines, and you probably know it's the #1 engineering school in the world, for earth sciences. And so I wanted out of this crazy thing. But what they did was they sent me down to Mississippi as an instructor of electronics, and then they cross-trained me into nuclear missiles, so I became the guidance technician on the Hound Dog nuclear missile. Anyway, I finally got out of the Air Force after 4 years in. Because of my career specialties, there was only a few of us around, and I went to Colorado School of Mines. Anyway, I got in the game of Monopoly. My dad owned the packing house in Denver, and my job was to do the banking for it because we went out and buy a carload of cattle from the farmer. We got to pay for it in 24 hours. Well, my dad's business was so big, we were selling, after we processed the animal, we sold the processed meat back to the government. And, of course, that means we got paid in 2 or 3 months.
Oh, of course.
So we had a big spread, and my job was to hit the banks to borrow on my government receivables, and that's when I learned the money game big time. Anyway, I built a house in Aspen, and my housekeeper had a book called UFO Contact from the Pleiades. That's incredible color photographs, of the billy-meier material.
Yeah.
Well, that was exactly what I saw at Edwards Air Force Base 25 years before. That got my attention. Well, at that time I was in the real estate development business. I flew down to Phoenix, and I talked to this couple who said that they were investigating a man in Switzerland who claimed to be in contact with beings from the star system, the Pleiades, who said that they engineered this planet for 500 million people. Now, I had to digress prior to that. While I was playing the game of Monopoly, I was running around with some of the guys that are planning on taking over the world, and they're talking about reducing the world's population down to 500 million again.
There's that magic number.
Well, they asked me to be the finance chairman for the next president of the United States 2 years before I became president. Today, your listeners can look up in the state that he's in Georgia, it's called the Georgia Guidestones. That's kind of a summary of what their plan is. And I'm sure you've had people on your program talking about that before.
Sure.
I sat in on the meetings, however, so I got some very details on that. And my job at this minute, or what I feel like, is I'm trying to alert people. I don't want them to be scared, but just get prepared, because this is what's being planned for planet Earth right now. Now, the best thing I can tell people that I was in the game of monopoly or money clear up to the top. I got to the point where the Federal Reserve didn't like me at all because I could control banks and had nothing to do with them. That's because of me borrowing money and selling money to banks, frankly. That game allowed me to do a lot of things by getting me licensed. The state of Colorado wanted me licensed for selling money, but they were told to do that, and there's no such thing as money. They have no definition. I mean, I should put up the definition of money according to the IMF, and you'll find out that there's no definition of money. So if they can't identify it, how are you and I going to play?
So what? So what exactly is money? What is that dollar bill that has a pyramid on the back with the the all-seeing eye, and that phrase, "In God we trust"? All others pay cash.
Well, it's everything is based on the game that they're playing, and it's a huge monopoly game. But remember this, Rob: somebody else owns the game. That's all I can tell you. When I was asked to be the finance chairman for the next president of the United States, I attended a room. In there was the world leaders, and first thing I asked was, "What does a finance chairman do?" And they said, "Well, you sit down with Ted." So I was with Ted Kennedy, and he says, "You're really good with money. We're going to send you out to all the state Democratic functions to raise money for the party." Anyway, some other things came in, and Ted did some remarks that I was really upset with. So I got up and left him, walked across the street or across the room with Pierre Trudeau and his wife. And, of course,
Margaret.
At that time he was right, as the prime minister. Anyway, I'm sitting talking to him. I'm having no problem with him, but I'm looking down to his wife, and there's a little half cigar box full of white powder.
Oh.
That really upset me. I'm sitting around looking, and we had world leaders, and the conversation led me to believe at this point, if this is what they have to be, and when they get up to this point, I don't know if I want to be part of them anymore.
Right.
So on Friday, this is when the meeting started. I said, "Look, I just started this $100 million project," and they said, "Don't worry about it. We'll put it on ice." Basically, leave it set for a couple of years, because it was 2 years before he became president. And I sat in on the meetings over the weekend what Jimmy Carter had to do, and that's what it was. And when I first said who was going to be, and they said Jimmy Carter, and I said, "Jimmy who?" And they said, "Well, he's a one-term governor from Georgia." And I said, and he's a Democrat. And I said, "But I've been voting Republican." And Paul Volcker, he's about 6'6", walked over, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Son, don't worry about it. We control them both." Well, I knew that. But here I am getting it directly from the guys. In fact, Paul and I flew back on the same plane from it was in Aspen, and we flew back to Denver. And I said he was the most powerful man in the world. He said, "No, I'm just the front man." And then it reminded me of some of the meetings, like Kissinger said, "If you want power, we'll put you in a position of power, but you got to do our bidding." And that's basically Congress. And that's basically the world situation right now. And that's what they're getting. Now, the Plan 2000, the year 2000, was important because that's the day they wanted to get the war started in the Middle East, or World War III. Well, obviously, they're behind schedule. So that's what you have to look at. They're also sitting on the meetings on, quote, what we were talking about before on money,
yes.
And they're planning on calling a national emergency, and at which time all the banks, everything's going to be shut down, and you're going to have to go to and it's already law, it's under the FEMA rules. You will have to go register at the post office, and you're going to get the new photo ID, which will be linked with all your medical records and everything else that you have, so they know who you are. So you can ask me questions about it in details. I don't want to,
Sure,
make
I
people.
understand.
I just want to make people aware of it because I was involved with all of these meetings, and I just backed out of the whole deal. Let's go back to...
Go on, sir.
Well, from that point, I'm sitting here doing that, and I'm building, shopping centers and office buildings and motels and restaurants all over the country. Anyway, I'm going out playing this game and said, wait a minute, this is all coming apart. Anyway, I built a house in Aspen, and my housekeeper had this book, UFO Contact from the Pleiades, the Billy-Meier stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I flew down to Phoenix, I became in contact with, the publishers of the book, and they said they wanted to publish another one. And I said, so why don't you do it? And they said, well, we don't have the money. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll loan you the money to publish the next book, because I'm building all over. And I said, I don't want to be bothered, but I know what you have is true. Yeah, once you see one up close, you know it is. So anyway, I made a deal with them. All I had to do is they sell the books. When they give me back my money, I'll go away. They don't have to worry about me. I didn't want any profit or anything else. My name and I were. Well, anyway, about 90 days later, I got a letter from them, and I got the accounting, and they'd received 3 times the amount of money I gave them, but there was no check. And so I called them on the phone, and I said, "Where's my money?" And they said, "Well, we found out who you are. You don't need it."
Wow.
Well, by that time, I was so wound up, Rod, reading. Well, you've read a lot of the billy-meier material.
I sure have.
Well, I'm reading. Well, I'm sitting here looking at all this stuff, and I said, "There's got to be something else that's going on with this stuff." So what happened at that time, of course, they were getting their information indirectly by Wendell Stevens. So I flew down and I talked to Wendell. I also grabbed a plane and flew off to Zurich, Switzerland, and rented a car. And it's about a 45-minute drive outside of Zurich, is Hindersmith Rudy, where Billy lives. So I'm knocking on the door, and a young lady, you're probably familiar with Bruni, the girl that was, acting with Billy over there, helping and stuff.
Right. Yes.
And I said, "Look, I'm George Green." I says, "I'd like to talk to Billy because I got some questions. This information is so profound, and I know it's true, what I'm allowed, but I want to ask him some more questions." She said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I want to help." And I said, "Look, the buck stops here. It's right here. If we make a deal, I'll be glad to help you guys get stuff going." Anyway, she left and came back about 10 minutes later, and she said, "Mr. Green, I'm sorry. Shirley MacLaine was here a couple months ago, and she promised to help us, and nothing has happened." And I said, "Well, it's late in the afternoon. What can we do?" Now, Shirley had been investigating the Pleiadians all over the world. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes.
But anyway, what happened at that point, I said, "Well, where's the closest hotel? We can't do anything. We can't see Billy." Like she said, all Americans are crooks. They come over and take their pictures, and they take all their stuff, and they don't help them at all. And I said, "I understand, completely." So anyway, we went and checked in the hotel. Next morning, knocked on my door at 7 o'clock. Here's Bruni sending me 2-page message, and I still have it, from Quetzal, directed to me. Now, Quetzal was, as you know, the Pleiadian commander. We were invited back over to Billy's compound, if you want to call it, and for the next week, I got my mind blown. Everything I thought I knew is basically a lie. Even everything I've been told, or studied at Colorado School of Mines, everything. Well, the story then became that when we went over there, Billy was being visited at that time by the people from the Planet Uno. Remember that wedding cake pictures that are famous around him? Mm-hmm. Well, I was there at that time. I actually took pictures. And when he was using his ray gun, one of those guns that they were giving to him, you saw those pictures.
Yes, I did.
I got pictures of the tree. This is funny. They told me, this is the ETs telling me, I could take 3 pictures. And I went out and I took 3 pictures, of the tree. And there was another one about 20 feet up in the air where they, took the weapon and put the hole through the tree. So anyway, I come back, I got a roll of film, 36, and I come back and I developed it at 21, 22, and 23 are, perfect pictures exactly of the stuff. And I show them when I do it. But 24 was totally blank. But the rest of the roll had all the pictures on it.
Really?
So very true. Anyway, it was kind of reminding me what was going on, were going on. Well, while I was with Billy and them, I said, "Look, I'll go ahead and help you get this stuff published." And I said, "I'll help the ETs get the information out." And I said, "You got my word. If there's, if that's not any good, nothing is." I said, "But I have a problem, Billy. You've given away the worldwide rights to the guys down in Arizona." And I said, "I'm a real estate developer. I always, I got attorneys to keep me out of trouble." I says, "You got one automatically. With this kind of information, I'm going to be in court." But I said, I have a solution. And the solution is I'll take the information back to my attorneys. At that time, I had a house in Beverly Hills. My attorneys was Dern, Mason, and Plown. That's the attorneys for the Screen Actors Guild. And I said, if anybody can break a contract, they can. So anyway, I flew back to the States. I said, I told Bill I'd get a hold of him later. I gave the information to Dern, and of course he looked at me incredulously. I'm making a deal with ETs and Billy, right? It's a real fun game. Anyway, about 30 days later, he come back and he says, "They got it all done. Come on over." So I came to his office, and he says, "We got a judge that's willing to handle the material for us, and we'll get this thing all squared away." And he says, "But we got to have Billy over here in the courts." I says, "Not a problem." So from his office, I called Billy. And Billy, I says, I'm going to, you got to come over here to the court and appear in the judge. And I said, I'll go ahead with my deal and help you get the word out to the world, because I was connected with the movie industry indirectly at that point. I knew a lot of the producers and stuff. So anyway, Billy, he reminded me, he took me over when I was in Switzerland. He showed me pictures of San Francisco being destroyed. You've heard about that, but I saw a lot of them, of an earthquake. Well, I was also, since I went to School of Mines, we were studying the geophysics and the San Andreas, and it's ready to go. We know that. In fact, I almost lost one of my shopping centers out there because of an earthquake that happened almost that same time. Huh. At any rate, what happened at that minute, when we were sitting here looking at it with the attorney, Billy says, I have 3 children and I'm safe here. You're going to have to find another way. I says, Billy, that's not the way the courts work over here. You got to be here, but I guess I'll have to let the ETs find a way. So I left his office. My wife and I had a little 450 SL convertible, a little Mercedes. Yeah. Anyway, we're going out towards the airport, and in broad daylight, one of the beam ships followed us for a half an hour. I mean, I couldn't. This is to remind me what was happening was real, Rob. That's all I can say. It was unbelievable. Well, subsequently, at that point, we went on, and all of a sudden, we're in contact in what I call telepathic information, if you want to call it, or given this information that indeed I am involved with those things. Now, one of the other problems that was involved when I was with Billy in the first place, he was showing me pictures or showing me the documents that he and Rashid, remember Rashid? With Billy, that's the one that the Greek priest, he and Billy went to a tomb where wrapped in resin was the original writings of Judas Iscariot, described to Christ. I was originally there, and I told Billy, I said, this is important because when I was a kid, Dr. Walter Moyer was a friend of our family, and he was one of the doctors that dug up the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he come back, and he gave me the real story, what he said really went on, and there was no man named Jesus at that time, as you know. Anyway, he gave me that story, and here I'm looking at the documentation Billy gave me. Oh my gosh, it cleared it all up, and it was right there. So I said, I tell you what, that has nothing to do with the contract with the guys down there. I'll publish it right away. So what happened, we sent a copy of the document to Dr. Jim Deerdorf. He was a professor, as you know, at the University of Oregon. Right. And he was, quote, a born again. He says, I'm going to disprove the document. And as you know, he ended up proving the documents were real. So we ended up publishing that book over here in the United States. And, of course, people want to know what the writings were and what Christ was all about. And that's pretty much what the book was all about. So I ended up really going into the publishing business at that time. Well, because of my connections, in the banking world and also in the political game, there was a lot of people who were coming forth at that time to talk to me about publishing the truth about everything. So I had friends. I don't know if you had Ted Gunderson on the air before, but he was a friend of mine. I helped publish his books. Wendell, of course, didn't have any money. I ended up financing his books. So most of his books that he published, the hardbound books, right. I put the money up for him.
Son of a gun.
Interesting, huh?
It sure is.
Well, Ben Wendell, when I'm there, I'm over there with Billy, and at that time he's in contact with the UMOs, and I'm talking to Billy about that. And I'm also talking about Wendell, because Wendell had a bunch of information, as you know, Dr. Antonio Rivera over in Spain. So I flew over and talked to him, and there were several groups of extraterrestrials that were involved over there, all the UMOs. And then I end up going to South America. This is on Wendell's behalf, to another group of people. They look like people, but they were actually walking plants.
Wait a sec. Hold on here. Walking plants?
Well, they look like us. They're chlorophyll-based. Rather than having blood, they're chlorophyll. And they were living down in the jungles. Anyway, they had the cure for cancer. I got a sample of the stuff about the size of a pea, and it's kind of like a resin. Anyway, I flew it to Chemitox Laboratories, and we made a spectrographic analysis of it. And then I flew the copies down to Dr. Alan Hynek. Remember him?
Sure, Project Blue Book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm down with Hynek to give him the information, I said, no, we're going to help. We're going to try to help people given the cancer out. Well, I didn't realize at that point. I found out that Hynek was also working for the other side and the government. Interesting, huh?
So Hynek was
CIA.
Oh, so he was doing something up front as a PR, and then behind closed doors, he was being manipulated and handled by the CIA.
Exactly. So information that they allowed out. Remember, we had a lot of UFO. There was 18 crashes of UFOs in New Mexico. I published a book for Wendell on that. Anyway, there was a lot of stuff that was happening, and I said, look, all I know is I have friends in the three-letter agencies, and about everything they go on, they want to manipulate. I said the people should know the truth because all the networks are all controlled by the same handful of people. So you're not sure what information you get. The only information you could really count on, and I want everybody to discern the information. It's like your guest or me, everything else. Check it out for yourself. It's like me. I made a deal with the extraterrestrials to publish their book. I even joked about it. The handbook we're talking about before, the Handbook for the New Paradigm, I told them it had to be less than 200 pages because people's attention span wasn't going to be going any longer than that. And I said I wanted a small paper, and I said we'll have it in a small paperback thing so people can put it in their pocket. So guess what? We did 3 books. They're all identically the same. I mean, the sizes and everything. I joke with them because I said I'm not going to be the author of them. And so we had a big discussion on who the author of the books were, too. And that's all spelled out in the book that they can download free off of the Internet. If people would read all 3 of them, they, too, you give them permission, they'll be in contact with you if necessary.
So why the big cover-up? Why the big hush-hush? Why is the government allegedly hiding the truth from the public, this great big truth embargo?
Well, the truth is everything is being manipulated in the way they want to for world control. Now, when the extraterrestrial situation comes in, you and I both know there's a lot of sites out here to show ET craft every day around the planet. I mean, they come in and you show the pictures, you show them. And, I get it myself. The problem is, if we start doing that, we're going to upset a lot of the, quote, religious crowd, because how many different versions of religion are there around the planet?
Oh, hundreds.
Yeah.
There's
100 versions of the King James Bible.
Right.
Just about that alone. And when they say version, that's somebody's opinion. They keep changing the word. It's like, I joke a lot. Even when the ETs were going, I said, look what, the God thing and everything else. I said, so what's above everything? And they say, that's above everything is the creation. And I said, well, what's above the creation, right? That's the next step. And their answer back to me, there's still mysteries for them. I said, well, that's interesting. Anyway, they're going out within the books that we published, Handbook for the New Paradigm, Embracing the Rainbow and Becoming, which are free downloads on our website. By reading those material a couple of times, they're not easy reads, Rob. When you get to reading them, you're going to start looking at the world in a different way and understand what's going on and what we can do to change the ending of the story. Because the ending of the story, frankly, it scared me because about 14 years ago, they wanted me to build an enemy prisoner of war camp in downtown Las Vegas. I got a copy of the contract.
An enemy?
Prisoner of war camp.
Wow.
Yeah, I gave it to Ted Gunderson, the former head of the FBI for Southern California. And Ted says, George, I'll get back with you. He said they're building them all over the country right now, only they changed the name. They're called FEMA camps, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And right now in Montana, on the radio, they're advertising for people to come to work at the FEMA camps. Is that preparation time? And if you keep watching the Middle East, can you tell me, that's where World War III is supposed to start. Can you tell me how close we are to that?
We're very close. We're very close.
Exactly. We're very close. Well, if I can get people awakened to what the big picture is and how we can possibly change it, we're not going to change the way things are coming down. In fact, that's the last communication that I had to make any sense. There's too few of the people that are waking up to make any significant difference. They say at this point now, get together with other people of like minds. So that's like your listening audience, Rob. That's the reason why I'm on with you right now, because your listening audience is willing to, what I call inquiring minds want to know, right? We want to know the facts about it. I put out the information. We're spreading it, and it's going around the world. I mean, you have no idea how it is going. And I'm sitting here, and I'm still traveling around the world. I was in Beijing with the leaders, for instance, and the last thing they told me was 5,000 years it's their turn to run the world. Well, what's China doing?
Oh, they're doing a lot just to prove that. They're building up their navy. They're reclaiming land in the middle of the ocean so that it'll be within striking distance of the United States.
Right, they're building a new Panama Canal type thing, as you know, in Central America right now. They're half done. I just talked to people down in British Honduras. I mean, things are happening behind the scenes. They loaned Ecuador another couple $1 billion. Ecuador is still on the dollar system. It's one of my favorite countries. Brian O'Leary, a close friend of mine, the Apollo astronaut, moved down to Vilcabamba, and I helped him get his house built. I was down there with him. Anyway, we're doing that. I moved down, get myself a place in Cuenca, which is at 8,000 feet, and then I looked at to get down. But my focus, is, of course, is the United States because that's where I'm at, and that's where the books are. They're in English. They're being translated in other languages, but it's a challenge to get people to not watch a football game, frankly.
So let me try and kind of wrap my head around this so I can give you, some sort of semblance of a question that would, wrap it all up. Why is this happening? Why is China getting ready to start a war? Why are we looking at so much turmoil? If everybody knows this, isn't this one of the worst kept secrets in the world?
Yeah, but people don't translate it to what it look, I was scared to death. I'm sitting here listening to them. They're going down. Right now, according to the ETs, we have 8.3 billion people on the planet, and we're increasing by 250,000 a day. Now, this is over deaths. So every 10 days, there's 2.5 million more people added to the planet. There's no way we can sustain it. Everywhere I go around the world, everybody's complaining. Now, also, when I was in Panama a few months ago, the ocean right there in Panama, the equator, 5 degrees warmer. Now, the ocean's 2/3 of the world's, as you know, content out there. If it's 5 degrees warmer, and we have another thing, the planet is tilting on its axis, as you know. We're moving closer to that. We have some large asteroid particles that are going to be coming this way right now to affect us. So we're getting ready for another flip on its axis, as it's done before. We're getting ready for major Earth changes and weather changes. There's no way we're going to stop all this. I mean, if you take an airplane that starts in Seattle and it flies to Miami, for instance, each one of them have 20 tons of fuel, and only half of that burns. Now, they changed all the fuel content in the United States, and so we have these trails. Now, the hope was that they would, because we'd eaten holes through the ozone. You know about that story.
Sure.
That was the first nuclear testing we were doing down in New Mexico. After World War II, we got we got some of the scientists. The Soviets got the best. Anyway, we started doing above-ground nuclear testing and below-ground testing, but we sent out some rockets to the higher atmosphere, and what it's done is eaten holes through the ozone layer, which is allowing all the gamma and ultraviolet rays coming down on the planet, which is killing off 1,000 life forms a day. Now, I was concerned about this, so I flew to Washington, and 5 blocks north of the White House is the World Watch Association. You can pull it up on the Internet. It's all funded by major corporations who obviously are keeping track of all goods and services because it's a big monopoly game no matter where you're at, right? It's consumerism. They want to know how much of the product we have. Well, right now, what's happening to all the product in California? There's no water. And so what's going to happen? It's like me. We want to look at all the chickens that are being killed in the United States right now, because of all the diseases.
Yeah.
As they said, they plan on reducing the population, quote, by all means necessary. The plan in the United States is to use neutron bombs in all the major cities. That'll keep the buildings intact, and the radiation will go away in a few days. It's crazy. But this is what their plans are. It's every congressman, every senator got copies of it, but the congressmen and senators don't even talk to each other anymore.
When are these plans supposed to take effect?
They're behind schedule. The Plan 2000 was named that. They call it Agenda 21 now. And you probably heard about the Georgia Guidestones. They put up this year's dates of them. They changed the dating on them. And they since cut it down. It's right in front of us. It's just that they're behind schedule. It's very concerning to me right at this minute, Rob. I'm looking at it. I said, where can we be that's, quote, safe? We were looking a lot of places up in Canada, as you know, but we have the same problem up there.
Yeah.
Every place that you go, it's just unbelievable. And you have no idea what 1,300,000,000 people are. I was a guest of the government. I ran all over China. I mean, they're unbelievable what they're consuming, what they're doing, and the stuff that they have. They've copied everything that we've had, and they're making stuff. And Japan, of course, is way ahead of us on the cell phone industry, but we can't use their technology. It would change everything. It's all over money again and power.
What's going to happen with Russia? Russia is now acquiring 40 new ICBMs this year. They're ramping up their military. They're buzzing, NATO force planes, and they're buzzing naval vessels. Look what they did in the Ukraine, for goodness sake. Is this the sleeping bear waking up again?
Exactly. No, Russia was way ahead. My son's a nuclear physicist, spent 3.5 years in the secret cities in Russia. And he come back and he said, Dad, they're 12 years ahead of us on the space program and about the same thing on the nuclear. He says, you watch them shut down NASA. And within about 2 months after they come back, sure enough, we shut down NASA. I mean, Look at Russia send up the rockets up to the space
ISS,
platforms. Yeah. See, they're so far ahead of us, but our propaganda machines that we have over here makes it so we're doing well. And yet we're talking about 50 million Americans on some kind of food stamps right now.
It's terrific. Let me ask you this, George. In your opinion, did the United States actually go to the moon?
Well, because I was with Brian, we discussed that. No, we did not. We've been there since. The Russians were up first.
Yeah.
And of course the Russians exploded the first nuclear bomb in 1908. That was the Germans that did that, actually, in Russia, in Tugunsta, Siberia.
Right.
And that happened, and of course that technology was always kept by the secret. It was like the flying saucers that Russia had. I mean, the Germans had. And then, of course, we share. I talk to some of these people when they come back. I'm at the wrong age because I lived through some of this, and most of my friends that were involved in the three-letter agencies, were sharing stuff with me, but everybody's dying off, at the age group because they're all sitting down. And all we have is a bunch of people coming out of school now. I mean, they don't teach history in school. Right?
No, they don't. No.
And they don't teach anybody to start thinking. And it's like my grandson graduated from college, right? He can't find a job, so what does he do? And most of them are that way now. 9 out of 10 of them can't get a job after graduating from college.
George, you and I have to take a short break. We're only going to take one commercial break. Then I'd like to get back to this. This is very important, what we're talking about, George. Hopefully I can help you raise the awareness, and we're going to get as many people to go to your site to download the book as possible. Stand by, George. Thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. It's a great pleasure having you back on. Exo Nation, George Green is my special guest. www.nohoax.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, and George Green and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue live and around the world right here on the Starcom Radio Network. Don't go away.
In the world today, most people want what is called the American dream. They want love, a family, a fancy car, and a nice home in a nice neighborhood. They also want a good job and money to travel to interesting places. Life is great because they have the American dream. But what happens to this dream if they hear they have a devastating illness like lung cancer? The doctor may tell them they need treatment immediately or they will be dead in 6 months. He tells them you need surgery and then you need chemotherapy to get better. When they get home, they think of many unanswered questions. They ask themselves, will I survive when so many of my friends with cancer have died? How will I deal with the pain, hair loss, nausea and vomiting, sore mouth and other side effects of chemotherapy and pain of surgery? Will I be able to keep on working? What will happen to my family? Then they look at the internet and wonder, is there a better way to deal with lung cancer and return to my American dream? Carl Helvey can tell you yes, there is a better way. Carl Helvey is a registered nurse with a doctorate in public health and a 38-year lung cancer survivor. Carl was given 6 months to live when diagnosed, and he refused chemotherapy and surgery. Carl used alternative interventions. Those not only helped him overcome lung cancer, but also to remain cancer-free and healthy for over the past 36 years since recovery. In his book, You Can Beat Cancer Using Alternative Integrative Interventions, Dr. Helvey will tell you his story of using all-natural treatments for lung cancer and continuing to work during his treatment. Free of pain and discomfort, Carl will also share how he remained cancer and disease-free since then without chronic illnesses or prescribed medications. His story is supplemented with chapters by Dr. Bernie Siegel, Dr. Francesco Contreras, and Dr. James Forsyth, alternative integrative physicians, and Dr. Kim Dalzell and Tanya Harder-Pierce, health professionals. All have successfully helped others overcome cancer. Research presented by the alternative physicians on their treatments for lung cancer demonstrate a significantly higher long-term survival rate for lung cancer clients than those obtained by conventional doctors. In addition, their clients were free of or had reduced side effects. You Can Beat Lung Cancer Using Alternative Integrative Interventions by Dr. Carl Helvey is now available at all major book outlets and at www.beatlungcancer.net. That's www.beatlungcancer.net. This information may help you return to the American dream.
Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Hi, this is Ken Elliott. When I'm floating around the universe, I always try to tune in to Rob McConnell.
Hi, ho there, Twinkie Frog on Sesame Street. When I want to find out what's going on with UFOs or ghosts, I listen to the X Zone with Rob McConnell.
This is Les Corrigan from Target Internet Development. You're listening to Rob McConnell on the X Zone Radio Show.
This is John Hogue, Prophecy Scholar, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
George Green is my guest. www.nohoax.com is his website. And we're talking to George about UFOs. We're talking to George about what really makes the world go round. And he's giving us warnings. Now, the name of the book is The Handbook for the New Paradigm. And it's available by going to George's website at nohoax.com. George, is there any way that we can turn things around, or has the deal been made and we're just waiting for the boot to fall?
I'll read you, this is my last message. It is with regret that we inform you that the window of opportunity to salvage your planet and its human inhabitants is now closing. We are grateful for those beings that have heard the warnings and have turned their attention towards the creation of a more desirable outcome for this scenario. Regretfully, that number is too few to make any measurable difference. The days ahead will be difficult and discouraging for those who now know what might have been It's our suggested advice that those are committed to their service as, quote, ground crew, redouble their efforts to draw themselves a circle of believers to support each other to the days ahead. Now, the ground crew, by reading the handbook, you'll get an understanding you may be in contact, and they consider us the ground crew. They're not going to interfere. Mm-hmm. This is our game. So what is happening, by reading the books, those people that are awakened to be part of the ground crew, it's, biblically speaking, in John 1, it says, in the beginning there was the Word, and that wasn't a correct translation. In the beginning it was thought. And thought made manifest is what we all are part of, and so we have to rethink the ending of the story. The trouble is the rule books we've been given are not right. In other words, if you go into in the Old Testament where it talked about the so-called Ten Commandments, like right. Exodus 20, if you read Exodus 21 and 22, it takes them all away. And we joke about it, that thou shalt keep the Sabbath day holy. Which day is it? That makes people confused. The real answer is every day. Mm-hmm. You give thanks to the creation for allowing you to live every day. So there's not any separations and stuff where we separate people and do that, but we should be getting people to understand we have to rethink the ending of the story, but we're being presented in the facts on a constantly basis today with all the news. The way to divert everything, of course, is to get everybody interested in sports and entertainment as they take over the world, or concerned about money, or whatever, like you said. It's all the little trials and all the rest of it. And how do you explain to people that the Federal Reserve's a big, if you want to call it a Kmart or a McDonald's, it's just a big game again. We're just using a piece of paper that is basically worthless. China is now using their situation all over. They want to be the currency of choice in the world.
So we've got China starting to come alive again, building up its military might. We've got North Korea that is building up its military might. We've got Russia building up its military might. We have ISIS that is going after global domination. And what the hell are we doing about it? Nothing.
Well, they're keeping everybody asleep like somebody else is going to come do us or somebody's going to save us, right? So all I have to do is lay down. That's not going to work that way.
Now,
you and I have to do the saving.
Is that why, George, everyone is looking to the sky for the extraterrestrials to come and solve all our problems, or the second coming of Christ?
That's exactly right. They forget that this planet was engineered and the people on it were engineered, if you wanted to, by extraterrestrials. Each of the different races come from different star systems. There's only one race on the planet, frankly. That's a human race. Some of the ones that were left, I was in Australia in the outback, and a little Aborigine come up to me, and they were some of the ones that were here the last time the planet has gone through. And a guy come up to me, and I'm sitting in the middle of if you've been out at the outback in Australia, there's absolutely nothing there. Anyway, I don't know where he came from. Anyway, he come up and he says, "What are you here for?" And I said, "Look, I'm just exploring the planet." And he says, "Are you a missionary?" And I says, "No." And he says, "Good." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Turn around." And he pointed up, and he says, "See that?" He was pointing to the sun. He says, "That's my God. I can live without your God. You can't live without mine."
Whoa, heavy.
And, I turned around and told this to my buddies, and I turned around and he disappeared. But that little statement really hit me, because I'm sitting here and he's exactly right.
Yeah. I often wonder, George, how much information that is being neglected by us when it comes to what the Aboriginals and the First Natives and the First Nations of every country actually have.
Well, you got to ignore it, because they're less than. They don't control the money. That's the biggest thing. Keep them in different places. That's the whole game. You're right, because you look at the Aborigines here in this country, and they used to work for me. A lot of the different ones. The chief of one of the tribes in there. We discuss all that. The other people's belief systems, no matter what they have, they got to have. That's the best one. I think my dad was the best one when I asked, how come there's so many churches and which one's right? He says, go out and investigate. And I go to every one of them. They all got whatever the preacher of the day, his message. It's not that they don't mean right, but what they're trying to do is take away the responsibility. It's like Christ said, what I do, you can do and greater. Instead, they want to have it up like that somebody's going to come save them. The ETs are going to come save them. Well, there's a group of ETs, frankly, are hoping we're going to destroy ourselves. They want the resources on the planet.
All right. So, George, obviously you've discussed this with people. How many years have you been trying to get this message out, George?
Well, I'll go back to it's about 30 years now. I've been trying to get it out. It really was going really quite well for quite a while, but it seems like in the last 10 years, with all these changes on and the people's fear and money and jobs, just everything coming apart.
Sure.
It's changed down, and because of the distribution of media, it's like most of the people walk around with a cell phone. They ask it a question, it'll answer to them. It's one of all these new tablets. They're downloading. People aren't reading books. You realize half of the bookstores have closed in the United States over the last 5 years.
Here as well.
Well, they're doing that. They're not reading, and you would think they were going to the Kindles and what have you, and we thought so too. But that's worked out. But that's out downloaded now. People are not interested in that anymore.
I was speaking to a publisher last night. And they said they're breaking away from writing books or digitizing books. They're going into videos, into video production, because people want to be entertained. People are too lazy. They don't want to read. They want the story told. They want everything done for them. And what I see this as, this is the dumbing down of society.
Exactly. The libraries, if you go, the libraries in the United States, I was in Vegas at the library convention down there. And it's all DVDs. In fact, the libraries themselves have DVDs. People go out and check out the DVDs. They don't read books. And if you have remember, I'm in the minority because I've been publishing nonfiction. I talk to a lot, even Rodney Stitch, you probably know, or had him on your program before. Yeah. Well, Rod and I were talking the other day. Rod has done nothing more than try to put out the truth in his books, Defrauding America and all the rest of these things from all of his connections. Well, some of his connections were some of my, we were friends. And we're all talking about the same thing. I don't care if you give all of your listeners, Rob, all of the truth right now, they're going to get blown away. So you have to almost give it to them piecemeal, and that's the reason why I like the handbooks. I mean, if people can read the first 30 pages of the handbook and they can understand it, they're okay. But most of them are not going to do it, and that's what we've been finding out. When I was first on Coast to Coast, with George Norrie, I offered the book out to the listeners that came out. I sent them a hardback copy to over 5,000 people.
Wow.
You would think that would make a difference. I mean, I blew a bunch of money, and I thought, well, this is going to be really spreading. And, of course, I'm being monitored, and we're being monitored right now by our friends off planet. And they're just seeing how the responses to each one of them. Well, each person that is listening right now, just go to the website and read just the handbook. There's all three of them are there. But if you just read that, if you read all three of them, you get a total understanding of what's happening and how you can be part of the solution. You and I can talk about problems all day, but we need to have a solution now.
You're right. That's right. Because one of my favorite sayings, George, ever since I was a kid was, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, and who wants to be part of a problem? I remember when you sent me your first handbook many years ago. It blew me away. I read it about 3 times, George. I'm saying, you've got to be kidding. What am I missing?
But did it make any sense to you?
It made sense after the 3rd time when I started comparing what was going on in the world and what you were talking about. And I'm saying, my God, this guy's on track.
Well, I look, I'm just a publisher. I'm not the author. It was really interesting, the process of them putting it in black and white for me. Because I've sitting down, if you look at the book, I was joking about it as the information was coming down, on the computer, obviously. Right. But I was sitting down and I said, that should be in italics. And I'll be darned, I'd watch it, and it changed right to italics right in front of me.
It was
amazing. But you got the book.
Yeah.
I'm just a publisher. Fortunately, I'm secondhand in this case. I'm the publisher for the extraterrestrials.
No, you're the medium. You're the conduit.
Well, a medium.
You're the conduit, my friend.
Did I send you the spiritual laws and lessons?
No.
Of the universe?
No.
Well, that's when we got involved with the Talmud of Emmanuel. That opened up another Pandora's box because, as you know, there's really no such thing as death. It's just getting rid of this Renerac, right? Mm-hmm. what I call it. So anyway, when I'm involved with that, the principles that were involved in all that came through and brought me the modern day version, if you want to call it. I'll have to get it up to you so you can read it.
All right. George,
it's totally fascinating.
Listen, George, I'd love to have you back on in the near future. I know that you travel all over the place, but I'd like to bring you back on so that we can hammer these points home. Because I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution.
You're part of the ground crew, part of the solution.
That's what I want to be.
I appreciate you being there. That's what we want each one of your listeners to be that way.
All right, George. I'm sorry, sir.
I just want to appreciate, thank you for having me on, and hoping your listeners got to think a little bit.
Well, between you and I, George, I'm sure we can make a little bit of a dent.
Well, we're doing it.
You know,
that little prayer. The little prayer in the little book is very simple. I am a human becoming. Help me become. You remember that one? I'm a human becoming. Help me become.
That's right.
By saying that in your prayers, that opened up the what I call the channel for communication with other thought processes.
George, I want to thank you ever so much for being on the show. I'm going to be in touch with you when I get off air. I'm going to send you an email. And together, my friend, we'll come up with a way that we can keep this message going and get the book into the hands of the people.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Take care of yourself. My regards to your missus. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye, George. Exo Nation, George Green has been my guest this hour. And check out his website, www.nohoax.com. And I'm serious. I read the book 3 times. 3 times. It's not a hard read. And you scratch your head at the end of the 3rd time and say, you know what? I'm starting to get it. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on the Starcom Radio Network.